in the presentation, and as I am putting that in the chat, I'm going to also tell you that I've done this a couple of times in person, a couple of workshops over this, and I always tell everybody this is like the ugliest presentation that you will see, but I had to make this make sense to me. There is the link to the presentation, and you will see, I call it my ugly presentation, but as I was working with the OLR setup, I had to put it in a way that made sense to me. And when I first started looking at it, I had a difficult time understanding it. And I had quite a bit of experience with online registration because the district I came from, we did Power School enrollment. And so I was the one that did all the setup for the Power School enrollment. And so when we started doing this, it was just a little bit different, and it took me a little bit of time to sort of figure out how to do it. So that's why I've done a couple workshops, and that's why I thought, well, let's do a webinar and see if we can help some of you if you're having some trouble with some of the setup. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen. And we'll get started because I usually do a workshop in about 3 hours. And I don't think anybody's for a 3-hour webinar. So I'm going to try to cover most of this within an hour. So give me a second. Let me get my screen shared. Okay. And I'm glad Suzanne's with us. So if there's anything you can't see, Suzanne, just let me know and I'll fix it. Okay. So the way I have this webinar, the way I have this presentation set up, and I'm going to go into the actual system and show you, we'll do it that way. But what I did was, these are the links to different pieces that you're going to be interested in. And so as we're looking down through it, and we'll talk about it, but I gave you a picture of what it looks like in the setup, and then I gave you a picture of what it looks like in the actual enrollment form so that you can sort of make some connections there. But I always like to start with this part that says before we begin. And so when you are working in the online enrollment system, the terminology is extremely important because you have to understand, when you're talking with Infinite Campus and first of all, OLR was hard for me. I was like, what does OLR mean? And so even though I'd done, online enrollment, but it is their OLR system. I'm not going to go through all of these. But what I wanted to show you is when we start talking about index and we start talking about pleats and fields, and I'm going to show you what each of those mean, and you start talking about your literals and your list bank, you have to know how to go to each one of these. When you talk about kiosk mode just basically means you got a computer set up or you send a link to someone that needs to register. And kiosk, they don't have to have an email. They can just directly get into the online enrollment, fill out the application, and fill out the application. When you talk about kiosk link, I can't hardly talk about online enrollment without talking a little bit about all the stuff that goes with it, such as when you do a kiosk, if you have schools that you may say, hey, the parents don't have internet, they don't have access to a device where they can even do an online enrollment form, then what you can do at your school, and this is what we did in our district, we actually set up a kiosk at the school, and the parent could come in and the parent could actually do the application online if they needed to. The nice thing that I like about the OLR in Infinite Campus is that it looks the same on a web browser as it does on your device. So it's and they call that HTML5, but it's very versatile that way, and I really like that. But you might want to consider doing a kiosk. Another thing that I always like to throw in before we start talking about the setup is if you are coming from doing everything completely paper online to going to the online enrollment. I will say from personal experience, you have to just pull the Band-Aid off and say, we're going to do it online. And by doing that, Again, make sure you have a good backup plan for those that don't have the technology or whatever. But in doing that, you're going to make all your data much cleaner. Plus, when we get to the processing part, it builds households for them. It's just a lot easier. And I like the data that you can pull from the back end of it. Okay. So this is a link to just some of the different information. So for example, when you talk about, you're going to hear staff processing, you're going to hear student processing when you watch some of the videos from Infinite Campus. So staff processing is just taking care of the demographic information, the parents, the household, and the student processing is actually enrolling that student and creating an enrollment record. That's the difference in the two. Okay. You do need to know a little bit about this because when you start doing your setup, you have to know, well, who needs rights to see, who needs rights to help maybe process. So another one is the health processing. So any student, when they say on their application that they need to, that they have some kind of health condition, all right, are you going to alert the nurse for that? What are you going to do with that? Are you going to let the nurse do the processing of that piece of the application? So those are just some of the things that you need to know, but I like this document. It's just a short 2-page document that gives you all the information and all the things that you have probably been hearing already. Okay. OLR, on demand reference guide. I'm sure you have already been here because, we're pretty close to the end of May, but here is just a 1-page document for you that will take you through. So as we talk today about pleat creation, you can come back if you want to get to just this 1-page document, and it links out to the videos that will reinforce all of that. Okay, now OLR workflow will probably be a little bit overwhelming for you right now because what it does is it takes everything that you should do with OLR and getting it ready for the next school year. And so it might be a little bit overwhelming, but if you have forgotten how to go somewhere and do something. So for example, if you have forgotten how to create your letters, I know I can come here to this OLR workflow, and in line 7, it's going to tell me I'm going to go to my ad hoc reporting and the letter designer. Okay. So that workflow is good to read through. Hopefully the terminology and the document that you have today is going to give you a good start. OLR processing is not covered, but I do throw this in, and we'll go over this more in depth in July. But in the OLR processing, this is, and I have permission to use this. This is provided by Moore County and Lee County schools. It's sort of an effort together. And so as you're looking at this, when we talk about the OLR processing, once you get your OLR finished and you're ready to open it up and you're ready for your data managers to start processing OLR applications, you need to talk about for your district, what's your communication plan. So I put it in so you can put it on your radar early, because there does need to be a communication. If you have an application that comes in with siblings that are at the high school and the middle school, well, you don't want the high school creating a household and the middle school creating a household. So those data managers are going to have to talk to each other. So that is just one this is just a document. This first part is one that Moore County put together, and the second part is Lee County actually added some workflow stuff with Q&As. So I think this is, and again, I asked both counties if I could share this because I think this is just a wonderful document that they're using for the processing. Okay, so that's the before we begin. So as you're getting into it, let me talk to you a little bit about what you need to do. The first thing that you're going to do when you come into your OLR is you are going to go down to your system settings, and you've probably already been there. So in your system settings, and it's down here under your OLR registration setup. So now one thing that confused me when I started was your setup is here, but your processing is in your census. Okay, so your processing is under census under online registration. Okay, so don't let those two confuse you. Setup is in your system settings. So in your system settings, the first thing that you're going to want to look at is your OLR setup. So you're going to want to look at this. And when you are doing this OLR setup, now Infinite Campus will probably help you with this. They probably already have a template out there that you're working with. Notice that this is an OLR template. And so they already have one that you're already working with. If I have some phase 1 schools and you had yours from last year and you didn't really use it, but you decided you're going to this year, what you're probably going to want to do is you're going to want to come down and click the new button, and you're going to want to copy last year. So you're going to say new, give it a good descriptive name, and see where it says copy the config from. You are going to copy it from your last year's configuration. And that will pull in all your pleats, all your questions, your indexes, and everything. Okay. Now, I knew I only had an hour for this webinar because normally in the workshop, I would take you through making a copy and all that good stuff, but I knew I only had an hour. So I actually went ahead and made a copy last night of the one that we're going to work with. So here's my copy. And if you'll notice, look at the dates. One of the things that you will have to do, and I apologize, I am not on my big screen today for this webinar, so I'm going to try to make it large and small. On the dates, if you are going to, if you're building it right now and you're testing it, what I would probably suggest is that you do this part here, just your kiosk. Okay. And you might want to, as you're working with it, like let's say I'm working with it this afternoon, I've got it open from 5:21. I'm just going to keep it open until tomorrow, because I don't want anybody filling it out. I'm not advertising it anywhere, so it shouldn't. But I've just got a few dates in there so I can get to my kiosk link, because the dates is what makes it active for you to be able to fill an application out and actually test it. If you are not going to do a portal annual update off of this one, then you can make notice, look at these dates are all the way in the future. You are probably not going to, well, you might. If you're going to open it up in your actual parent portal, then of course you'd want these dates to be when you would open it. So let me give you an example of that. If I'm doing kindergarten registration for next year, then I would probably go ahead and open it up in my parent portal. And if I have it opened up here for the parents to do, when they click on it from their parent portal, they don't have to fill in all that information that they filled in before, such as all their demographic information, emergency contacts. They literally just have to add their kindergarten student if they had already had a parent portal with an older sibling. Okay. But for testing, you are going to want to do the kiosk. So I'm going to save that because I changed the dates. And then once you do that, what you should do is you should go down to where it says the information, the OLR Information Center. So it is here. All right. You can also get through your system settings. So, but it's called the OLR Information Center. And this is where you are going to get your links to actually put out on your website. Okay. This is also, if you have errors, anything that you see in red, if you can fix them, you should. But this is where you're going to see your errors and your warnings and just some different information for you. But what we're going to be concerned about is this up here. So if I am posting this on my website, if you do this one, this one here does not require an email. If you do this one, it's still kiosk, but it does require them to put in an email. Now, what's the difference? Well, if they put in an email, you could go ahead and send them the information for Parent Portal to sign up for Parent Portal. These are for them to, oh, I'm sorry, I did it backwards. They're up and down this way. Here's your kiosk with email and kiosk with no email. I'm sorry. But here is the one, these are the ones that you would use for your kiosk. These are the ones that you would use for your parent portal that you can link, and they would use if they were going to do that. Okay. Most people do this one or this one, but most end up probably doing this one. So what you want to do is copy it. Now I am in Chrome, so you're going to want to open up another browser. So I'm going to open up Edge. And when I open up Edge, I'm going to take that one and I'm going to paste it. And it's going to bring me up to my online application that I'm working with. And so what you need to do is you need to go through, start a new application and fill it out, but don't submit it. Okay. So when you don't submit it, and I did one last night because I didn't want to take the time to fill in all the questions. Okay. So I'm going to return to my save one because I want to be able to pull this up and talk to you as we work through it. But I'm going to, and so again, this is kiosk. So when you're thinking about it, a parent that does a kiosk mode, all they have to remember is what was their number of their application. So I'm going to real quickly put in my information from where I did it last night. I did not submit this. Okay. Now look, email address is not required. Okay. If you had done the other one that requires the email address, then it would have a little asterisk here. Okay. But I did put mine in even though it wasn't required. Okay. No. And my confirmation number is 3. I got that last night when I completed it. When I did this first enrollment screen, it said, here's your number. Keep up with that number. So WBYFD and begin. Okay, so, and I'm going to close this one out in the background. This is where I am going to actually take a look at what I have done in my OLR setup. I'm going to come here to see what the change looks like. And the way that you see the change is I click up here in the address bar and just hit enter and just refresh your screen. So whatever key stroke you use to refresh your screen. Now, if you take a look at this one is one that's been copied from another district. But in this opening page, they actually tell them everything that they want them to do, the documents together, the proof of residency, and it talks about, and it even links out to other immunizations. So now if you stick around to the end, I'm going to show you a shortcut on doing this, unless you know HTML code and you want to just do it from scratch. Most of us don't want to. So once I do this, I'm going to click begin. And again, I filled this out last night. Okay. So as we're looking at this, what I wanted to show you is in the presentation that I gave you, this is the way it makes sense to me. We're going to skip that. I'm going to come back to your settings in just a minute. Here is what a pleat looks like. This is what it looks like in the setup. So let's talk about this a little bit. So as I'm looking at this top part is what Infinite Campus calls indexes. Now, if I have any phase 1 schools that did not do this last year, but you're going to open it up this year, your indexes may look a little different. And if they do, I would contact Infinite Campus to update your OLR and tell them that you want the updated OLR system. Okay. So these are indexes. So if I say I'm going to go to the index of emergency contacts or my index of household, that means I'm going here. So I'm going to here. Here's my student information. If I go to completed, notice I said I want to see this, so I didn't hit submit. That's so that I can make changes in my OLR and come see what it looks like here. Okay. Now, as you're looking down through this, I'll notice I'm going to go to the student. Student. So when you see this, these are what's called pleats. So in that terminology, these are all the different pleats. Now, I am in a training site. So in this training site, I don't actually have the NCDPI pleats, but you are going to get, and I'll tell you what those are from the presentation in just a second, but you are going to get some pleats that you don't have to actually build, which is wonderful, especially like military connected. I built that one in Power School Enrollment. DPI has already built that for you, which is awesome. So these are called pleats, but when I open this up, I'm going to open up student transportation. When I open up student transportation, these are called fields. And so in the fields, I can choose, notice that this is called a drop down. I can choose this drop down. I can actually choose what, or I can create what goes here. Now, there are a few things that are within Infinite Campus, especially when you're dealing with the household, that you can't change the drop down, what's listed in the drop downs. But anything that I create and that I add, I can actually do that. So for example, on this one, this enrollment validation, this one is one that was created by locally. It was not created by Infinite Campus. So they created a plea that's called enrollment validation. Underneath that, they added a question that says, are you the biological parent or legal guardian? And then they added yes or no. And look at this one. If you click no, then what it does is it opens up another question for them to choose. All right. Webinars are really hard because I can't stop and say, hey, you got a question? Because and I only have an hour, so I got a lot to show you. But I wanted you to see, so that is the first thing you need to do. Open up a different browser, not the same one. Open up a different browser, fill out the form, but when you get to the end, do not hit submit. And then as I make changes, then I can go in and make changes. Okay, now let's go back to your setup. The first thing that you're going to want to do in your setup is you're going to want to go to your OLR system settings. And what I have done is I just gave you a screenshot, but I gave you a link out to Infinite Campus that tells you and explains all the different system settings within your OLR system. And the way that you get to that is you're going to click, let me go back. I'm going to go back to my system settings and I'm going to go down to my OLR system and it's called system settings. Now make sure that when you're in this that you are choosing the right configuration at the top. So I'm working in my 2526. So all of these settings that you see are different settings that you can set up for your OLR system and it's district wide. This part is not set up per school. It is district wide. And so as I'm doing this, I can hover over the eye, and I'm not going to take the time to go through all of these because I want to get through some other stuff. But as I hover over the eye, it also tells me what this setting is. Okay. Now, let me point you to a few things that you might want to watch on this, and I'm going to see if I can make it a little bigger. Okay. If I want to allow secondary households, then I would check that. And to allow secondary households would be like if you have divorced parents, then they can actually put in the information for secondary households. When you are doing this, notice that it says that the parent can also indicate that a student lives in a secondary household when they do their configuration with the household setup. So that's one you might want to do. All of the others, let's see, I'm trying to think. This is one that you're going to want at the bottom. You see the one that says minimum emergency contacts. Okay. Under the minimum emergency contacts, if you put 2, it is only going to allow, it forces them to put 2 emergency contacts. And if you put, and you can also fill in the max, like somebody told me that they had somebody that put in like 14 emergency contacts. So I can, if I want to, set the max. I have to have 2 to 4. You can say you have none. And we had a conversation about this the other day in one of the workshops, and they were telling me that they did 0 because if you have a situation, and I was in the situation when we moved to San Antonio, we really had no family there whatsoever. So if they had put 1 or 2 here, I would have had to put somebody that was in another state as my emergency contact because it was just us with no other contacts at the time when I registered my students. So those are just some of the things that you need to think about. Also, as you're doing this, you can go through and it tells you everything and describes it, or you can click the eye and hover over it. But those are a couple of the things that I wanted to draw your attention to within this that you might want to make sure you check and make sure that you decide how you want to do your emergency contacts. Okay. Now I've already got mine set up, so I'm not going to change that. Also, if you are doing school boundaries and you're doing the uploads, of course, you're going to have to enable that, and your Infinite Campus person will help you with that. Here's one that you might be interested in. And this is one that you can actually open up by school. And so there is a page in the settings that you can say, for this school, I want to open up my OLR registration for this. That might be good if you're, and again, I go back to kindergarten registration, but kindergarten registration is only for those schools that offer pre-K. And so then you are, you might want to open it up to all of them, but you can open it up just for certain schools to be able to do their registration. If you have like a virtual academy and you open up the registration for that earlier than you do some of the others, then you could check this, and then it's going to look at the registration windows for those schools. Okay. All right, so let's go on. And that's the settings part. So there's a link to it in the document. So the next part I want to show you are the pleats. Now, the pleats in your OLR system, where you get to those pleats is in your related tools. I have my 2526 selected. I'm going to go to what's called my OLR builder. And the OLR builder is where you are going to spend most of your time. Now, I like to keep referencing, because if I pull up my form that I have filled out, if you notice, look, household, household, parent, parent, these are your indexes. Make sense? And so then if I go to, I'm going to go to student. So I'm going to click on student over here. And then if I click on student here, if you'll notice, here's demographics. Let me go back to my application and go into my student. And look what happens. I've got demographics. I got race, ethnicity, and look, preferred name's not there because preferred name, I have that pleat turned off. These are your pleats. I have previous schools. So you see how as I'm building it and as I'm working with it, then I can actually see it in my other browser that I have open. So I'm going to actually click on the preferred name pleat. And I'm going to decide that I want to enable this. All right. And so when I want to enable it, there is a field on this pleat that says enabled. So I'm going to click, yes, I want to enable it. I'm going to now save it. And now if I go back to my pleat, look, preferred name is now listed as one of my pleats. And then if I go to my form, I'm going to pull up my form. And I'm going to come up and refresh. And when I refresh, now you're going to see the pleat for preferred name. Okay, so that's how you turn your pleats on and off. So if there's one that you don't want, then that is how that you would actually turn your pleat on and off. Okay, I'm going to go back, say no, and save it. Okay. As I'm working with this and I go down, and let's suppose that I want to do, here's a couple that I have. I have transportation on here. I have transportation on here a couple times because you can tell I've been playing with it. But if I click on this pleat, notice this one's not enabled because I've got another one. But I could, if I know I'm never going to use this one again, I can just go ahead and delete this pleat. Make sure that you are, oh, I got fields attached to it, so it won't let me. But you have to go in and delete all your fields. Then you can go in and delete that pleat. So if you create a pleat and you didn't really mean to, then you can actually go in and just click on it and delete it if you want to. Okay, now let's take a look underneath. I am going to actually turn off transportation. I'm going to build a third one. Okay, so look, I turned transportation off, and if I go back to my form and refresh it, I'm not going to see that pleat. All right, so in your OLR workshop agenda, these are the pleats that's going to come, and I have them in red. These are the pleats that's going to come in from NCDPI. So if Infinite Campus hasn't already put them in, or if I have phase 1 schools, you're going to want to ask Infinite Campus to import them into your OLR. And if you had already built them, which our phase 1 schools had, then you are going to want to go into your OLR builder and turn off that pleat because you need to use the NCDPI ones. Okay. So as I'm looking at these pleats, these are ones that you don't have to build. So if you're worried about, like, I remember this digital learning dashboard and military connected, those two were the complicated ones. If you are thinking I'm going to have to build them, you're not. They're already there. NCDPI has all the questions that you need to ask for those that are a requirement. So here's what it looks like in Infinite Campus. Here is what it in your builder. Here is what it looks like in your actual browser if you came back to it. Okay, now let's talk about fields. Let's go to the OLR builder, and if you are actually doing this with me, I'm going to create a new pleat. So transportation is one that I would like to get information on because our transportation department is going to export the addresses from Infinite Campus into TIMS to do the routing. So I'm going to build a transportation pleat. So the first thing you're going to do is I'm going to say a new pleat. And in your pleat, you need to give it a name. Now, as you're looking at these, the name that you see, so for example, this one says transportation 2, that is the name that is required, but then you also have to give it a name of what's going to show. So when I'm doing this, I'm going to say my new pleat, and I'm going to call it transportation. And since I can't be more creative, I'm going to call it transportation 3. This index, the reason the terminology is so important, it's asking you, where do you want this pleat to go? All right, so which index? So the index that I want it to go under is student because I want to know if this student needs transportation. So my index is going to be student. All right, starting title, I usually keep it the same thing. Okay. Sequence. Sequence is the order that this appears within your OLR. So let me go back and explain it this way. So here's my student. Here are my pleats. The sequence of this would be 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the order that they're in. I do not suggest that you start with 1, 2, 3, 4 though, because what if you come in next week is like, oh, I think I need this pleat, but I want it to go between these two pleats. Well, if you started 1, 2, 3, 4, you can't put it in. You're gonna have to renumber. So my suggestion is when you create pleats to renumber these to like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, something like that. But all sequence means is what order is it in. So now I am going to, and since I don't remember my orders and I'm trying to save time, I'm going to say this is going to be my very last one. So I'm going to make it 90. Okay. All right. Show for everyone. This means, do I want this pleat to show for just my new students, or am I doing just a returning student one that I'm going to open up through the portal for parents to update their information? Then I just want this pleat to show up for existing students. I want it to actually show up for everyone. All right, and I'm going to talk about these two later, and I'm going to click save. Okay, so now I have, and it's down here somewhere, transportation 3. There's my transportation 3. Actually, I don't like that. I'm going to put it 17. I don't want it after my signatures. So I'm going to change my sequence to 17. Let's see if I put it in the right spot. And save it. That's pretty good. So transportation 3. And now if I go and I take a look and I refresh my screen, there's my student, starting with my student, and there is my actual transportation. Okay. Now, as you are doing this, you are going to change your titles and you're going to fix some of those titles. So for example, I don't want this one to say transportation 3. I want it to look a little better than that. And so I am going to go in back to my transportation and I'm going to call it, actually, I do it somewhere else. I'm sorry. I always forget that. Okay. Now, the next thing that I want to do in this transportation is I want to add a field because I want to get information. But before I do that, I can't stand that it says transportation 3 here. So I want to fix that. And the way that you fix that is you're going to go, and this is the part that made no sense to me. It's called literals. It's not a what you see is what you get, which is what I had in Power School enrollment. You have to go over to your related tools and you're going to go to what's called your literals bank. And in your literals bank, that's where all the text that goes with everything is located. It's in your literals bank. So I'm going to select a category, and my category here is student. So if I click the arrow beside student, you see how this is not that intuitive. That's why I like to do this. If I click the arrow beside student, notice here is my transportation 3. Okay, well, I don't want this title to say transportation 3. I want it to say student transportation. Okay, now if you are translating this into other languages, this is also where you would translate your information. Okay, and I like to copy and paste whatever I put there, I put over here. Okay, and I save it. So now if I go back and I take a look and I refresh my screen, now it says student transportation and not transportation 3. So as you're doing this, your literals bank is where your words come from. So if I was looking through this application and I was looking here at the health services consent, all of these words that you see here and even the title of this is in my literals bank. Okay. So let's go now, and we're in transportation. Let's go and let's go back to our builder. I think I saved it. Let's go back to our builder. Okay. And on this page, let's add in a field. So I'm going to click on transportation 3. I'm actually not going to. I'm going to click not new pleat. I'm going to click here that says new field. Okay, so under new field, you probably guessed it. I have to decide, first of all, what's your field name? So make sure that your field name is descriptive. So I'm going to call this one AM Transportation. No spaces. It's a field name. Also, think about this field name as if you wanted to pull something from the back end, this is the field name that you could use to actually pull that data. So I'm going to call this AM Transportation. Okay. The field type is going to be a drop-down list. And in that drop-down list, I'm going to actually give my user choices. When you look at your field type, a text box and a text area, use it as least as you have to. Because in a text box and a text area, there's always going to be room for a parent to type something in incorrectly. So if you can put your choices into a drop-down list, you can put them into radio buttons, you can put them into check boxes. My suggestion is that is what you do, because you want to use text boxes only in if you definitely need to use it. So I'm going to do a drop down. Now this list says, when I do a drop down, how am I going to populate it? So let me explain what that looks like. I'm going to go back to this one. Okay, so in your home language survey, under the home language survey, this is what's called a drop-down list. So in this drop-down list, notice that it's required. Notice that it has words that tell you what the drop-down list is for. And notice that when I click this, it is populated with the different languages. So this is coming from what's called your list bank. All right, now again, that took me a little bit to understand as I was doing that. So I gave you a picture. Here's what literals look like to do your text. This is where it looks like on the screen. This is what your list bank looks like. So I did an address one. This is what it looks like on your actual screen that a parent fills out. So anything that you are putting in a list bank for them to make a choice from, you have to actually create it if it's not already there. Okay. Now, mine is already there. So I'm going to choose from it, and it's going to be called a custom transportation question. And I'm going to show you how to create it, but this is my list, custom transportation question. All right, validation. If you want the red asterisk, you choose required. All right. This is just for looks, and then you can have it start out with a value if you want it to. Okay. Index, just like on the pleats, we talked about that on a pleat, your indexes and your sequences matter. Well, with Infinite Camp, with your fields underneath, you also have sequences for your fields. So like for the home language survey that I was just on for the student, in that home language survey, this would be sequence 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Okay, so it makes sense. That's the way that you actually get the order that they are within that pleat. Okay, so as I'm going back to this, index is where is it located. So this is going to be on my student index. So there's my index. So I'm going to come back. My index is going to be student. What pleat under student? It's going to be my transportation 3. Okay. Show for, I want it for everybody. And what sequence do I want it? It's going to be my first one, so I'm going to make it 10. Now, I will say, those of you that are going to build your own transportation question, unfortunately, this is not this part, but this part down here is where it would write back to Infinite Campus if there is a field in Infinite Campus that it can go to. Transportation will not. So I have tried it every way possible. Transportation will not write. So you can collect the data, but your data manager will have to go into the transportation screen and actually put in the request. But I would still use it to collect the data. But if you are collecting something that can write directly to a field within Infinite Campus, it will be listed here, and it will say, here's what it's, where it's going, and this is the element that it's going to be. Okay. And I'm going to click save. Okay, so now I've got my first one. If I click my arrow, there is my drop down list. And so as I'm looking at this and I go back and I do this, here is my transportation, student transportation. And notice it's got a red mark because I made it required, and there is my drop down list. And so this is, they need AM and PM, and then it will allow them to go to the next question. Okay. Now, where did I get that? Where did I get this, and how did I create that? The way that you do that is you are going to go to what's called your list bank. I got to watch my time. In your list bank, you create your list that you use within the system. And so I'm going to pretend like you have never, we don't have a transportation list. And so I'm going to click new list, and it's for this enrollment, and I'm going to call it transportation choices. Okay. And I normally don't put caps on names either. Transportation choices. And I'm going to save it. So now, how do I get to it to actually put stuff in that list bank? I'm going to click my OLR list bank, and I'm going to search for it, and it's going to be under this, and it's going to be called, it's under your custom. And there it is, transportation choices. Well, I already have a transportation choices. I'm going to do this one. Okay. And so there is my one that I just created. Okay. Now, I want to put choices in, so I'm going to click add row. And this is where you would put your description, which is what they would see. So I put AM only, and you might just put AM. The code is what's going to actually get fed into wherever you want it to go. Add row, PM only. Okay, I'm going to add a few more on this one. I'm going to do both AM and PM. Okay, I'm going to say daycare. All right, because some want to know if they're getting picked up by daycare, which daycare. All right, so we're gonna put daycare on here. So my code for this one is going to say daycare. And by the way, you can probably tell when I'm doing codes, I try to make the codes descriptive too. That way I don't have to go back and try to remember what they mean. So sequence, just like sequence says what order your pleats come in, and also sequence says what order your fields will show within that pleat. Sequence when here in here means what is the order that this is going to show in the drop down list. So as I'm looking at a drop down list, if I put AM PM first, it's going to show up here first. So I'm going to say this one's going to be 10, and I do these the same way I do the others. 10, 20, 30, 40. That way, if there's another one I need to add in, I've got space to add it in if I need to. So now I saved it. So how do I get back and do this one? Because I've got daycare. I am going to go back to my OLR builder. Maybe. And under my OLR builder, under transportation, I'm going to click the arrow. And you see where it says drop down list. I'm going to now change it to my list. I'm going to change it to the one that I just created. And I'm going to assume it may be this one. I don't know. We'll see. And I'm going to check it. Refresh, check. And of course, it was the other one. It was the other one. So that's how you actually, I'm not going to take time because I'm going to run out of time, but that's how you actually change it. That's how you actually create your list, and that's how you change it to what it should be. I'm going to put this one back to what I had just so I can see it. Save. Sure, I got that one fixed. Okay. All right. So this one is one, and I just chose one I already had created. If I choose after school, I wanted to actually open up another field because I want them to type in what after school care they're going to. All right. It could be daycare, it could be boys club, it could be whatever. So I want them to actually type in what they're going to do. So when they make that choice, I'm going to go to my OLR builder, and I'm going to add in a new field. And in this new field, this field is going to be under my student. The pleat is my transportation pleat. I want it to be for everybody. I'm going to call this one, this is going to be after school care. Field type, this one I am going to put a text box because I want them to be able to type in where they're going. I can put in a length if it's a text box. I'm going to give them about 50 characters to type in. Validation, I'm going to make this one required, and I'll show you why in just a second. And as I go on down, that's the index. complete it goes under, who it's going to show. Now, this one is where this is a question that's going to be based off how they answer the other question. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, if they answer the other question, which is the AEM transportation question, if they answer that and they say it's in and they say after school, then what it's going to do is it's going to pull up and it's going to allow them to type in that information. So what I created here was I created a field that is based off of another field. Okay, so when I do that, I'm going to save it. Oops, sequence, sorry. And it's going to be 20. And when I save it, I'm going to come back and leave. Transportation, here's my transportation. If they choose after school, now look what happened. It popped up and now this one is required. But if they did not choose, if they chose something like car rider, then car rider, even though that other one's required, it's going to still let me go on to the next question and see I have a green check. You could do this, and this is especially if I have any charter schools on, because if you want to know if you run buses or if they're going to be a car rider after school, I could make this one to where that if they choose bus rider, it would actually pop up and say you want AM, PM, or both. So you can do it based off of other questions. Okay. All right. I'm going to do one more. Because I'm almost out of time. I got about 7 minutes. So I'm going to do one more. I want to show you under student transportation. Let's suppose that I want to add in some information. So notice how the Safe Schools, it actually has an information page here. I want to add in some, I don't want to add in a field. I want to add in some text. So I'm going to say new field. And I'm going to call this my text. Transportation text. Okay. Now my field type is going to actually be a header or text. And header is what appears directly underneath what you are, directly underneath your pleat. I'm just going to make this in a text. Okay. I'm going to make this text is going to be required. It's going to go under student. My pleat is going to be my transportation 3. I want to show this one for everybody. And I'm going to go to my sequence and I'm going to call this one. I did 10, 20, 30. I'm going to make this 5 because I want it to appear at the beginning. And I'm going to save. All right, now I haven't actually put anything into this. Oh, excuse me. Okay, I haven't actually put anything into this field yet. So I'm going to click save. And notice that I put 5, so it shows a sequence of what it is, 5, 10, and 20. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to my literals bank. And in my literals bank, I'm going to find my student. I'm going to find my transportation 3. And notice that it all says AM transportation starting literal. This one says student transportation. If I go look at my form and I go look at my transportation, look, that is an ugly title right there. I would never say AM transportation starting literal. So what I'll do is I go to my literals bank, and right here is where I'm going to say, does your student need AM transportation? Something like that, okay? And of course, if you were going to do other languages, you got to change here and put in all the translation, okay? I'm just going to take out literal on all of these and just put after school care. And here's my transportation starting text. In my transportation starting text, I'm going to put something like, please complete the information for your child's transportation needs. something like that. All right. Okay. And I'm going to click save. So now when I go back and I look and I refresh my screen, now look, there is my text. Here is my drop down. Does your student need AM transportation? After school care, I changed that title. I can add more text if I wanted to. So that is how you look at the literals and how that you change things. All right. Now, one thing that you're going to be interested in is how do I fix my start page? And your start page is located, you think it's located under login. It's not. It is located under the shell and it's called instructions. And under shell instructions, this, and if I make this bigger, this is where that big welcome screen that you saw at the very beginning, this is where that welcome screen comes from. Now, don't panic because you're thinking, oh, wow, I want mine to look pretty. I want it to be bold. I want to put some links, but I don't know HTML to do that. And quite honestly, I do, but it's been years, so it'd take me forever to remember it. So what you can do in the presentation, at the very bottom, you go all the way down to page 16, the very bottom, I gave you a link out to what is called a WYSIWYG editor. Okay. And I also gave you a link. I'll go to color codes first. The color codes are the HTML codes that you can use. So if you want to change things to color to sort of get parents' attention. But on the WYSIWYG editor, what that means is what you see is what you get. So if I'm going to type, and I'm going to do this for my transportation, I want to type, please complete your students' transportation needs. And I want to say, allow at least 5 business days for bus routing. And because I used to work with this, of course I can't spell routing, and because I used to work with this, they won't read this. So I want to bold it. So look, this is my editor. I can bold it. If I wanted to, I could also change it to have a different background color. All right. I don't suggest doing a whole lot of that stuff because you want to make it readable, but I could change my text color. This is also how you would change your formats if you want to make it bigger. So if I want this to be a little bit bigger, but I don't want it to be quite as big as that, I can change it to headings, different headings. If I want to link out to something. So let's say, for instance, I'm just going to pull up a website. When you want to pull up something, you can't think of anything, can you? I'm just going to do a link out to Google. Actually, I'm going to do, yeah, I'll just do a link out to Google. So there's my link. I'm going to copy my link address. I'm going to come back to my what you see is what you get editor and do a search here for some reason. I'm going to click on that and I'm going to click link and I can type in my URL. All right. And click OK. And now what just happened? It became a link for me. And I didn't have to know any HTML code. So then what you can do is you see this part over here where it says HTML. I can copy all of this. Oops. Copy all of that. I can go back to my literals. I can do a paste, and there is my, oops, I don't want to do it there. I want to go to transportation. Oh, let me save it. I changed it. All right, I'm going to go back to my transportation 3. Here is my text. I'm going to paste that. I'm going to paste it and I'm going to save it. And now in my actual thing, it's going to look ugly because I didn't put too much effort into it, but you will get the picture. And look, there's my link. There's my link. There's my text. And so that link is in your document for you. And I have 401. So I guess we will end there.